chat with luminaries in e-discovery and related areas.
Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha, Senior Vice President of Brand Awareness at Reveal. Each Friday morning, except for this week, at 11 a.m. Eastern, I host an episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. Obviously, this week we are on Wednesday because ACEDS will be closed Friday in observance of Juneteenth. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. My guest this week is Ben Hammerton. Ben is a director of forensic accounting and eDiscovery at Quantuma Advisory Limited. Quantuma is an independent advisory firm. They provide expert advice on business transactions, assist in resolving business disputes, and help organizations and individuals overcome a wide operational as well as a range of operational as well as financial challenges. As I said, Ben is a director in the company's National Forensic Accounting and Investigation team. He advises law firms and in-house legal teams on legal technology and advisory services. He works closely with clients and contacts to continue to develop the company's forensic accounting service with a particular focus on e-disclosure, or as we call it in the States, e-discovery. Ben also advises clients on data mapping, case data strategy, workflow design, review team management, and so much more. And he also, I think, is a frustrated brewer doing some home brewing, but really trying to emulate his brother's successful brewery. Ben, welcome.
No, thanks very much. Really nice to be here. Nice to talk to you, George.
And I do at some point need to get over there just to see how good your beer is.
Well, yeah, I don't want to say it's better than my brother's or anything, but it's not bad. We'll do a quick one, we won't go that far.
If I could only load my pizza oven onto an airplane, bring it over, my pizza, your beer, we'd have a good thing going there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I would like to start our discussion this week talking about newer platforms and self-service. You know, the market has changed dramatically, especially in the last 3 years. Tell us about all of that.
Yeah, well, certainly from my perspective, over the last 3 years has been a big shift, really. Obviously, you've had private cloud-based e-discovery applications for years now. Very, very good that they are. But as the world has become a little bit more accepting of I'm going to call it the public cloud. I think that's the worst way of calling it because it sounds like it's insecure. But so the public cloud, the true cloud. So as acceptance of that has increased, so most companies these days have got Office 365 to handle internal emails and whatnot. We're all happy to use AWS for banking and things like that. Even HMRC, when you're looking at your tax records and things, you'll notice AWS up in the top. So the rise of cloud acceptance has made a big change to e-discovery because in the last few years we've seen a lot more true cloud e-discovery platforms. Partially just because the ability to create more sophisticated platforms built for the cloud rather than just sort of transporting them up there. And obviously storage space. Storage is a lot cheaper. And the ability, security really is one of the main reasons. It used to be that the IT departments would make me go through 5 or 6 different pages or Excel pages of justification as to why to use our version of the private cloud. But now you tell them you're on AWS and they kind of skip to page 6. So, it's made a big difference for the acceptance and the ability to modify the technology.
Do you still nonetheless run into those organizations that say cloud? I don't think so. Private cloud, definitely not.
Not so much, no. As
Mhm.
I say, I haven't had a discussion about it for some time now, actually, which is good. I mean, yeah, it used to be really, really difficult to explain that. Don't worry, we've got a data center. It's down in Canary Wharf, but if Canary Wharf goes down, then don't worry. There's a fail safe, and it will be backed up in Slough. You don't have to say that anymore.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's made life. Sorry, you answer.
Now, with private cloud, there is, or native cloud or true cloud, whatever you want to call it, still at the end of the day, essentially, is a server somewhere or a set of servers somewhere. And there are concerns, and I think legitimate ones, about where those servers actually are located. So if you're sitting in the UK and you're working with someone who's got data in, say, France, they might not want to use your London instance. Is that right?
Yeah, it is a genuine concern. Again, we find that we don't have to come up across it too much, but there are ways around it. So, if the simplest method would be, of course, us doing some form of pre-filtering on site to make sure that only the data that they absolutely want us to see or work with is taken out of the region. I mean, that's step one, but that doesn't usually happen too much. The other option is that AWS, which is what Reveal is based on, which we use Reveal, obviously. That can be that there are AWS hubs around the world. So depending on where the client is located, the data can be an instance of Reveal can be spun up in the region of requirements. And then the last option is that you can actually put a version of an on-prem version of Reveal onto a physical unit, and that physical unit can then go on site to either the client or to the client's lawyers. So yeah, it's something that we do come up across, but thankfully, again, a bit like the private cloud scenario, it's not so much of a concern anymore. Maybe I've been lucky.
Yeah. So one of the advantages then of the cloud is security, as you mentioned. What other advantages are there?
Well, actually, before we jump off security, one of the things that I always like to say on the security aspect is that, and this isn't to labour the point, but with your standard private cloud, it used to be that obviously you'd have people that were looking after it. So you'd have IT and IS experts looking into it, making sure the uptime's okay, no one's trying to hack it. But with AWS, Microsoft Azure, you've got thousands of white hat ethical hackers around the world trying to find ways in, trying to see where the damage or where the dangers are. So that's what again goes back to why the IT people with their first 5 pages of the questionnaire goes back to why they're a lot happier to skip those now, because they know that this level of this true cloud environment is incredibly safe. But sorry, George, you asked the question. And
no, that's okay, and let's follow what you were saying a little farther as well. What AWS can do, what Azure can do, I gather we wouldn't expect any individual data center or any individual company, especially any individual law firm, to do on the security front. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's taken away a lot of that. Taken away a lot of hardware, which obviously needs to be replenished and customized and renewed. It's taken away. This could be for the worst, depending on your company, but it's taken away a lot of personnel that may need to do that kind of work. So it's streamlined many processes and brought the costs down, which is what eDiscovery is all about. So.
Oh, at least we hope. Although sometimes I know from talking with more than a few in-house counsel, they don't always feel that the costs are going down or have gone down. Which takes us to a second topic, self-service.
Yeah, so self-service, that really does sort of hopefully dovetail into the cost side of things. So, self-service means different things to different people. So some people, and certain law firms, for example, have extremely well-versed lit support teams, and those guys, adding additional self-service in there means that they can really perform most of the tasks, if not all of the tasks. So that's great for those guys. And the more user-friendly the platforms are now, the more simplistic the workflows are to get what's needed done, the easier it is for us to manage what the clients need. But you've then got that middle ground. So some lawyers are very tech savvy, so they will do lots and lots of the hard work themselves in terms of searching, foldering, adding users to teams, changing permissions, whatever it may be. But if you haven't got the skills, you haven't got the time, or you haven't got the team, then of course it's great. You get to lean on the project management support of the company that are doing the work. So Quantuma using Reveal. But it just means that if you've got an easier to use platform with self-service at your fingertips, it means that, if you need to change passwords at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, or 1 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday, you need to rebatch the documents because you've suddenly realized that something's changed, and the review team are starting at 8 o'clock in the morning and there's 15 of them. You can send it through to us and we'll hopefully have somebody that will do the work for you. It's not a problem. But it means that having the tools at your fingertips in an easy to use fashion, I think it gives a lot more comfort as well. Because hey, look, if it's that easy for us to use it, if it's easy for the clients to use it, then how easy must it be for us? So again, streamlining things.
I think typically I've heard self-service with respect to e-discovery platforms talked about primarily in two areas. One is loading data into the platform, and two is generating reports and the ability to go in and generate reports you want. I gather from what you're saying that those two are part of what you're talking about with self-service, but what you mean really goes much farther than that.
Yeah, because when it comes to uploading data, it's brilliant if clients have got the ability to do that for themselves, because you might get another 5 documents from a client, or something on a thumb drive, USB drive, or whatever. So being able to upload it simply and add it to the place where it's supposed to be, brilliant. But I find that the self-service aspect is that side of things we usually take control of, just because we inventorize it. We can make sure that we've basically written down everything. It's almost a forensic process, to make sure that we can cover our tracks, and we can make sure that it's all been documented. So it tends to be more for the actual review process that the self-service really comes into its own. And again, that's just so many people are spread so thin over so many different tasks that if you've got multiple people on the team that can technically do it, not that you want to give access to everybody on the team. You don't want them all changing the coding panel to what they want, so that it looks great for them, but other people in the review start ticking different buttons. Yeah, you don't want that. But for our guys, because we have a different mix, you see. So we've got e-discovery people doing litigation, regulatory, employment, whatever it may be. But we've also got forensic accountants that might need to dip in and dip out for a deeper dive into certain documents. And then you've got the lawyers who might want to add a barrister into the mix. So the barrister then, gets given a certain set of documents or permissions for a certain folder. So I've probably clouded the issue a little bit there, but it's just, the idea of self-service just means that that you can change the workflow as quickly as you need to.
Yeah, I don't think you clouded. I think more you clarified. I want to go back to one point you mentioned. One of the areas that I have seen create problems for folks over the years has to do with keeping good records of what was done by whom when, starting at the very earliest efforts at figuring out what data you might want to go after, through the collecting and then the processing and then the use of that data. A platform will help, but no platform will cover all of that. And I gather that part of what you're doing as you use Reveal's capabilities is make sure that you check those boxes, that you're taking care of ensuring that someone is keeping that information so you know who you got data from, when, where it came from, what was done with it, and so on.
Yeah, well, it's a really good point, because the platform's only as good as the people that are driving it. And if you've got people on the team that, are just trying to do their part of the process, that's great, that's fine, and they will do a good job of that. But again, they may be stressed, they may be, under pressure. So what we're lucky with, and again, like most of the people in our space, I would hope, we've got a bunch of guys and gals that, these are forensic accountants, forensic investigators, collections experts. So these guys are used to almost in an old school way, the chain of custody. So we don't do quite as much, go on site, grab the laptop, grab the phone. We don't do quite as much of that as we used to, but that's where these guys cut their teeth. So, they're used to, going, getting the machine, writing down all the serial numbers, making all sorts of contemporaneous notes on it, and then loading that into an area, processing it to make sure that it's been categorized properly, consolidated, deduped, whatever it may be. And these steps are all written down. Now, with Reveal as a platform, with the processing area that's in there, you don't have to take that many notes, but you do kind of need to know where they are, and you need to know if some documents don't go through OCR processing, so they're not text searchable. What do you do with that? Do you ignore it? No. But if you know how to use the tool and you've got guys that are regularly well versed in let's call it data chain of custody, then that's what they're looking for. They're looking for those exceptions, so, should we say. So yeah, it's a really good point. You've got to have people that know what they're doing to run the platform, but also to do the things that the platform can't. And that's the good thing, is that the rise of the robo lawyer, the rise of the the self-serving e-discovery platform, it's not there yet. They still need humans to do it.
You had, of course, many platforms to choose from, some better known, some not as well known, none, of course, identical each to the other. What do you look for in a platform?
Well, I think the first one is familiarity. So you want to be able to log into it, and you want to see something familiar so that you can get to where you need to get to without having to go and read a guide, or if it is a guide, hopefully it's only 2 pages, that sort of thing. So and lawyers shouldn't be spending hours and hours trying to work out how to use the platform. Where does that time get spent? Also, where does that time get charged to? It's not a good situation for anyone. So first thing I look for is familiarity. In my opinion, all platforms should look broadly the same. Okay, there's different bells and whistles, so I'll caveat there. But all platforms really were kind of built on the idea of maybe Windows Explorer, Office 365, Outlook, Gmail. So you go in, you've got your folder list on the left, got your document list in the middle. You click on something like an email, and up it pops. So if you've got that level of familiarity, that's the first thing I look for in a platform. Can I find the folders? Can I find the documents? Where's the search bar? And these things should all be in pretty much the same place. And as the years have progressed, they're not massively different with different platforms in the look and feel. And that's important because, over the years, I've worked for firms where they've been reticent to try a different review platform. Obviously, as we mentioned, in the last few years, there's been a new wave of platforms that are, there's this native cloud side of things. And the reason for the uptake has been this familiarity because, lawyers are very intelligent people, so they shouldn't have any problem with logging into a platform and seeing that the buttons are slightly different shaped, sized, or colored. So familiarity is first thing. Second thing, again, I guess I'm laboring the point, self-service, or at least a simple service, or, sensible workflows, I guess, is key. Lastly, of course, it's got to be what sophisticated technology is in the platform to augment a standard review workflow, because all workflows should start simple and sensible, and then you add to them. Hopefully, you don't have to add to them too much. Hopefully, it's a really nice review. You don't have to do too much clever stuff. But how often does that happen these days?
Well, yeah. Let's turn to one of those more sophisticated aspects and take your choice of names: predictive coding, TAR, active learning, whatever name you prefer. Tell us about that side of things.
Yeah, so I always used to like the term intelligent prioritization, but too many syllables in that one. It's a bit, it's a bit too far, a bit too difficult to roll off the tongue. But then predictive coding always had a bit of a tricky name because, it sounded like it was making decisions. It's predicting and it's coding, which isn't quite the case. So yeah, things have changed a lot in the world of predictive coding, machine learning, intelligent prioritization. So in the olden days, and I say the olden days, it's not that long ago, I was banging the drum for TAR. Let's go with technology assisted review. I was banging the drum for TAR 8 years ago or so, and it was great. It worked, but it had its issues. So effectively, a reviewer would need to train the system, which is not unusual. That's fine. We'll come on to that, I suppose. But a reviewer would have to train the system, and they might have to look at, they would have to look at 1,500 documents to start with, take them relevant, not relevant. The system would then say, okay, I'm 70% happy that I know what it is you're looking for in a relevant or a non-relevant document. And then you'd say, okay, 70% is not good enough for me. The court's not going to be happy with that one. My opponents are going to laugh at me. It needs to be higher. So you do another 1,000, and then it gets to 80%. And you do another 1,000, it gets to 75%. And you're trying to get to the gold standard of 95% in those days. So a single, senior associate might spend all week doing this. Meanwhile, the review could have progressed. So whilst the technology was there, it just wasn't as polished and wasn't as clever as now. So it took a long time to get acceptance. It was only 5 years ago that the Piro case happened, whereby a judge turned around and said, this is a really good idea. You guys should be, you should be using technology assisted review. And then we land at today. So today we've got, effectively two versions of, there's many versions of, and I'll get told off for saying this, but if you boil it down, really, what is it? You've got supervised learning and you've got unsupervised learning, or supervised data prioritization and unsupervised. So the way I look at it is this. So TAR, what does it do? It basically learns from the documents that you've got, whether you tell it to or not, i.e. whether you train it or you don't train it. It looks at the document set and it says, okay, I think I've got an idea of what you're looking for. So here's a nice pot of data over here. Why don't you look at that stuff first? I mean, that's the simplest way of putting it. An analogy I like to use is shuffling a pack of cards. So it's a nice, so basically you're shuffling a pack of cards, but in reverse. So you want the picture cards, the face cards. You want the ace, the queen, the jack. You want those cards first. So how do you get them? Well, the system just says, hey, I've learned what I think is a likely useful document. So I've shuffled the deck. Why don't you have a look at the stuff over here straight away? Now, even that can sound a bit scary to some doing document review, but you don't have to trust what the computer says. In fact, you can discount it. It's doing its work in the background for the most part, or you can add the two things together. So you can have your searches with your keywords and your date range parameters and your custodians, which is perfectly normal, perfectly acceptable, but that might still end up with 100,000 documents. So then you say, okay, great, we've done step 1, 100,000 documents. Let's see what the computer thinks, about what, let's see what the shuffle of the deck was. And then it says, right, of your 100,000, 10,000 sit over here in the highly likely responsive, 20,000 sit in the likely responsive, and the rest, they're well over there on the right-hand side. So why wouldn't you take your standard process and add in a little bit of TAR? It's there. You use it, don't use it. It used to be that you would try and get these things agreed prior to the document review, and sometimes that happens depending on the parties that are against each other. But even if you haven't agreed on how you're going to use technology assisted review, it's still in there. It's in the platform. It's it's baked in. It's part of the process. So why not use it? It's a sensible workflow, and the DRD, in the practice direction, it says that you basically should be explaining why you're not using it. They're not saying base your entire review on what it says. They're just saying, hey, let it do its thing. They're not saying that, but it would be almost akin to let it do its thing and see if it helps. If it helps, use it. If it doesn't, carry on with your suggested workflow.
In other words, to overly simplify, you've got a potentially useful tool here. Why aren't you considering using it?
Yeah, and it really is simple. I mean, you can have it in the background. You don't have to have a person training the system. You just tell the system, right, either look at what these guys are tagging documents as, or look at one person how they're tagging documents as, and then later on log into the console and see if it was useful or not. So that's that. Yeah,
And you don't even need to let the people who are looking at the documents know necessarily that they're using these capabilities, right?
No, exactly. And it's probably preferable that they don't in some instances. You don't want people, and also you don't want people seeing that that a document has been tagged in a certain way by somebody else, or there's a prediction as to whether it would be a likely relevant or likely not relevant document. Because, in best will in the world, people tired doing a doc review at 11 o'clock at night, they might just say, yeah, the first page looks pretty relevant. The system says it's likely to be irrelevant. I'll just go with that. So, you use it, but you use it carefully. But it's not difficult to use it carefully. I'm making it sound more difficult than it is. It's actually very simple, and it's just an augmented workflow. So they used to call it, artificial intelligence. That even that's not really the right terminology. It's augmented intelligence. It's only using what the human would do, but the human can't spread themselves thin enough.
I like to think of it as adding a exoskeleton for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you're asking humans to go through many thousands of documents, and even if a relatively potentially responsive document is in front of them, if they're in the wrong mind frame, they've just gone through 250-page documents, and now an Excel sheet's popped up in front of them. These sorts of things can sometimes slip through the cracks. So help the review team out by giving the most likely useful documents first, and then if you're really lucky, and this is kind of the holy grail, if you're really lucky, then you can go back to the judge on the other side and say, look, we've done 30% of the documents here. I won't go into the clever stats, but we've done 30% of the documents here. And the technology is saying that there's very, very little richness left in the rest of the population. So can we dispense with the 70%, or perhaps we do only 50%, and then we do some more statistical sampling or whatever it may be. But if you think about a document costing, if you use outsourced reviewers, it might be £1 a document. If you're talking about senior associates and then the partners, towards the end of a process, it might be costing you, let's say £20 a document. So, with all the, looking at it properly, redactions, extra thought processes. So, let's call it £2 a document. If you've got 100,000 documents left, and they're very, very unlikely to be useful, and you've done a great job on the 30%, that's something that you can bring to the table in terms of cost savings. And usually the other side don't want to say yes to 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 pounds continuation of a doc review if they don't have to.
There are a couple of other sets of capabilities I'd like to touch on. First of which is concept searching.
Oh yeah. So it used to be possible. It's a lot better these days. I mean, the concept searching side of things. So think of this as the unsupervised learning, as it were. You can feed the machine and say, look, let me help me find more like these. So, for example, you could take a sentence, a paragraph, a document, a whole set of documents. You could go and grab something about swaps and derivatives from Google. You could take a passage, put that in the system and say, find me more like these. So you've got that sort of ability within. Mm-hmm. However, sorry.
Go ahead.
However, a lot of it is unsupervised. I.e., the system is going to look through, try and work out, linkages between documents based on the concepts within. So the words, the phrase structure, indexes of linked words and linked themes, I guess concepts, and the system will then put those into groups. If you use Reveal, then you've got the ability to use brain space, and that puts that creates a brain space brain. So in that brain, you can then delve deeper into certain sections of the documents. So it's not saying these are the documents you need to look at, but it's saying, right, okay, I've analysed the document universe. And in here, I think there's a group over here that this is oil, this is gas, this is Robocop, and I don't know, flamingos. And you think, well, crikey, that's strange. That's not a good group, or maybe it is. Flamingo could be a code word for something. Again, another good thing about concept searching is that it draws together words that you and I wouldn't necessarily put together. which may need further investigation. But the other one is, when you put together a concept cluster, you might have expenses, expense report, various other documents, John, Peter, and Paul, and then boots. And this is a slightly old example, but it was something when I was demoing concept searching a few years back now. And we were doing this, and I was showing the partner, just by the way, you might want to use this later down the line. And one of the concept clusters came up, and it had that kind of information. I said, that one doesn't look very good to me. I said, and your case isn't about expenses anyway. So he said, no, let's have a look at that. And we did. We had a look at it, and it did actually turn out that there was a subsequent investigation going on in the background, and I won't go into it, but those documents were really useful, and it was to do with misuse of the company accounts, company credit cards and things. So it's not always as obvious as that, but these concept groups that are put together, they're put together in such a visual way that it's very easy to investigate a group. And then you can not only just delve deeper, you can add words, you can add phrases, you can add sentiment, so sentiment analysis. So, you could find all of those documents in a particular group between certain dates, and it'll say to you, what sentiment do you want? Do you want happy, sad, somewhere in between? And you also, so you go for the angry ones. So those emails between those dates, those custodians, the angry ones, and the ones that were sent outside of normal working hours. And it's just, and there's so many other, there's so many other little bells and whistles that you can add into the mix. But you create this layered concept search, and you do it. You can do it almost without. You can do it without a lot of training, but you can do it sometimes without thinking. You're doing your own bit of investigation, and then the system says, "Oh, by the way, you've just narrowed down 5,000 documents into 250." Great, 250. Okay, still a lot to look at, but a lot
much
quicker.
Better than 5,000 or 50,000 or 500,000.
Yeah, or even better, get to 250 and then give them to someone else to look at.
That's right. That is right. Well, Ben, thank you very much for joining us today. Ben Hammerton is Director, Forensic Accounting and eDiscovery at Quantuma Advisory Limited. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Please join us next week when next Friday, June 25th, my guest will be Bill Hamilton, who is a professor at the University of Florida, Frederick G. Levin College of Law. Ben, thank you so very much.
Thanks very much, George, and thanks everybody. Take care.